Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know. We're discussing Brexit and the law and what the legal and political implications are for Brexit, Britain, the United States, and its European neighbors. Our guest today is Ian Anderson. He's an attorney in Scotland, which is a member of the EU, and the United States and South Africa. And also helping me today is Brandon Kaufman, a student right here at Nassau Community, and you can hear him do newscasts at 90.3 every afternoon, on weekdays at 4:30. Brandon, go ahead.
And to pick up on what we were talking about last, what are the issues being negotiated for UK law?
Well, the issues being negotiated as follows. The UK would like to remain a participant in the internal market. The internal market, of course, allows the free flow of goods, intellectual property, services, and worker or people. But it doesn't want to allow a free flow of people. So it's kind of cherry-picking what it wants. It also wants to get access and use some of the 50 or so international trade agreements which the EU has signed on behalf of all of the member states and which are registered with the World Trade Organization. Britain does not want to enter into a customs union, according to the latest report from the Prime Minister's office. And on the other hand, the EU will not allow Britain access to the internal market unless it allows free flow of people as well as goods and services. So there's a kind of stalemate at the moment. There's going to be another meeting in March and April. I don't really know how much further along the line they're going to go.
I've heard two terms described in the news, a hard exit versus a soft exit. Mm-hmm. So the hard exit, the worst case scenario, what will that mean for workers and industries and trade between Britain and Europe and other places like the United States?
Yeah. The hard Brexit will mean no participation by the UK in the internal market at all. It will mean no access to the 50-odd trade agreements which the EU has signed on behalf of all the member states. The effect will be you have massive job flight from the UK. And it's basically started already. The major global banks, HSBC, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, have already indicated they're moving out of London to Frankfurt and Paris with a loss of thousands of jobs. Vodafone, major telecommunications operation, is also considering moving out of London. So you're going to get a job movement, which is going to be disastrous for the UK as a result of cutting off access to the internal market.
And right now, this is happening because of uncertainty. People don't know if it'll be hard or soft or none, but people are making plans. They can't take a chance, and they need time to move things over.
From a business point of view, you're quite correct.
Okay.
So the uncertainty is really...
And even workers. Even a person may want to get a job in a more secure setting.
Most certainly, yes. And I know a lot of UK attorneys in Luxembourg, for example, are applying for Luxembourg citizenship so they can continue to work.
Or Ireland.
Or Ireland,
because whichever happens, the Republic of Ireland is independent. It's not part of the Commonwealth, I guess, and so it will still be a member of the EU.
That is correct, yeah.
So talent, lawyers, law firms, businesses, some of them are moving to Ireland because it's close, where they can... So in a soft... If there's no Brexit or a soft Brexit, they can continue to do business.
Yes.
And if there's a hard exit, they'll be in a safe haven.
Mm-hmm. And you have to factor into that equation the fact that a lot of car manufacturers import parts from the continental EU and assemble them in the UK, tariff-free, and then export them back to continental UK. They're horrified at this prospect, and they're also considering moving operations out of the UK.
And workers and talent may move around too.
Yes.
And their ability to shift workers may depend on that worker's citizenship.
To a large extent, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, is there a chance that Britain will reverse course and have a new vote?
That's a good question. There are two factors here. Will they have another referendum? And the answer to that is, of course, they can have any referendum they want at any time. This is actually the second referendum. They had a referendum in 1975 as to whether to stay in the EEC as it then was, and the referendum was in favour of staying in. So they could have a referendum. The other issue is
that possible or likely?
Well, anything is likely at the moment, because I think even to the people who voted for Brexit, the real horror of what's going to happen if they get out of the European Union is beginning to percolate through. Farmers, for example, will lose their subsidies, which the EU negotiated for all the EU member states. They negotiated a higher subsidy than the WTO actually allows. So
they've got that because of EU, not because of Downing Street.
No, because of the EU. Well,
okay.
Leaving the EU, they'll lose that subsidy.
And even for office workers, support services in London, there'll be less demand for those.
Yeah,
no one will want to do business in London or have a headquarters there.
Yeah, it's horrifying. There is if they do come out of Brexit, Article 55 of the Lisbon Treaty does say that you can reapply. So that's a possibility. However, the one possibility which is up in the air is, will UK actually stop the Brexit proceedings once it becomes too clear that this is going to be a real disaster? And as far as the EU is concerned, they say, no, once you've started it, you must continue to the end. As far as the UK negotiators are saying, they say, no, we can't stop Brexit at any time. The solution to that may ultimately be resolved in the EU court in Luxembourg as to whether they can or cannot stop Brexit.
Or by some ransom.
Or by some
ransom payment. For the right price, they might change their minds.
For the right price, who knows? Yeah.
Everything has its price. Okay, we're going to go back to Brandon for some more questions.
And speaking of payments, what effect will Brexit have on UK trade and economy?
Well, I think in a nutshell, if there's no good agreement, which I don't think there will be, it'll be a disaster. I mentioned the World Trade Organization and the 50 or so trade agreements which the EU entered into on behalf of all their member states, including the UK. The UK, as part of its negotiation, wants the EU to allow it access, after it withdraws from the Union, to all of these World Trade agreements. It looks likely that the EU may say no. You're out on it. You can't get access to them. In that case, the the UK will have to negotiate separately with other nations in the world, like the US, for trade agreements, because it's not allowed to use the EU. So if
Trump's willing, there could be a very friendly trade agreement between Britain and the US.
Oh, yes. And if that happens, a great opportunity, I would imagine, for US businessmen, because at the moment, a lot of US businesses are barred from exporting their goods to the UK due to very stringent EU consumer protection regulations. In fact, a lot of US businesses have two products. One for domestic sales in the US, and the other for sales in the EU, which have a much higher consumer protection standard.
So the shoddy goods go to the US?
I'm afraid so, yeah.
We only have a few minutes left. Are there other concerns about a hard or soft border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland?
Oh, that's an insoluble issue. You're quite correct. It's a very dangerous, very difficult issue there. At the moment, the Republic of Ireland exports its goods through Northern Ireland, through the UK, into the continental EU, tariff-free. And vice versa, Northern Ireland does the same.
And workers, too.
And workers, yeah. Movement, the whole thing. If there's a border here, which there may have to be, then that'll drastically dislocate the economy in both countries. The only solution to that really is, one of the major solutions is that the UK must join a customs union with the EU. But it refuses to negotiate on that. It says, no, we're not going to do it because we want the freedom to enter into free trade agreements with other countries. So it looks as if there's going to be no real agreement in this. There is, however, one kind of ray of light here, and that is advanced smart technology. Northern Ireland Irish border is not the only border with a non-EU and EU country. You have Switzerland and you have Norway. Now, in these two countries, they've devised a method whereby they can get vehicles and goods through quickly by initially scanning them with smart technology in the non-EU country, make sure they're okay for export to EU, and then getting them through quickly.
If there's Brexit, would the EU have to approve any agreement between Ireland and Northern Ireland? About the border? Hard or soft border, or is it just between the two countries?
That's a good point. It would have to be an agreement between an EU country and a non-EU country, and it would have to be done in such a way not to violate any of the existing half a dozen EU treaties.
And again, part depends on what the whole Brexit treaty looks like, or agreement.
Agreement, yeah, if there is one.
And we're running out of time, but what about Scotland? Can Scotland secede from Britain and rejoin the EU?
Well, that's what they've been stating it will do if the worst comes to the worst. And of course, you've got to remember that the United Kingdom is a union of two countries, Scotland and England, and there are international case laws to state that if the purpose of the initial union falls away, and it was really to get access to English trade, then the union can be dissolved.
And it can just be dissolved by a vote of Scotland?
Well, the Scottish Parliament has now been revived. The English Parliament has not. There's still a union parliament in Westminster, so it's a legal issue as to whether it can be done.
Okay. We have time for one more quick question from Brandon.
Will Brexit affect travel to and from the U.S.?
You mean, no, it shouldn't really affect it in any great extent. At the moment, the US is a non-EU country, and it'd be a non-EU citizen entering the EU. After Brexit, it was just the same thing. If you're entering the UK, it'd be the same.
Okay. I wish we had some more time, but I'd like to thank our guests. If you missed any portion of the program, you can find a free podcast by searching WHPC on iTunes. You're listening to 90.3, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, Long Island, and also over the internet at ncc.edu/WHPC. Please join us next week at this same time for another program on Law You Should Know.